overcoming fear and dissolving the ego? Or is it overcoming the ego and dissolving fear, or is it both? Throughout my life, I've spent a great deal of time in fear, both consciously and unconsciously. I've seen myself in so many different ways, through so many different lenses. And we often tend to avoid what brings us great pain. How do we move through fear? And why would we even want to dissolve the ego? You see, the ego isn't bad. We think that the ego is here to keep us away from what we want. The ego is actually here to protect us. We form identities at a young age. We develop and understand a way of being in the world that keeps us safe. And we become almost attached or even addicted to that sense of safety. The brain goes into panic when it feels unsafe and it reverts to what it knows. The ego forms identities, ways of being, associations in the world, and we run from that place. We operate, live deeply from that space. And we revert back to those identities over and over again. They become so familiar, they become entrenched in our brain, in our physiology, in our behavior, our emotions, the way we see ourselves, the way we feel about ourselves. All in reference to avoiding fear or that feeling of being unsafe. For me, I spent so much of my life being that person. I remember as a child, I would cowerce into the corner of a room. I would hide myself because I would be scared to meet the wrath of my father's anger. I was wanting to avoid the violence, the abuse, the fear that came with that. And the fear of hiding in a corner or being small, well, that was a safer choice. We're going to have times in our lives where we're going to feel the fear that we're in. We're going to feel the physiological effects of overthinking, of thinking that someone may reject us if we speak our truth, that someone may leave us if we show the fullness of who we really are, that we may be abandoned by that which we love the most if we show up in a fullness of being. Very rarely do we want to be ourselves because we're so scared of being rejected, being abandoned, being humiliated. So often we wear masks. I wore masks for so long, for so much of my life, with the people that I was with in an intimate, romantic way, with my friends, and more importantly with myself. I pretended to be something that I wasn't, full of false bravado. I was avoiding these identities that I had formed. I was avoiding what was underneath them. What was buried beneath these identities that I was portraying to the world. That was tough. Because in this loop of avoidance that I was in, I was coming closer to fear, but the oxymoron for me was I thought I was moving away from it. But the more I was fake in who I was, the more intense that fear became. And in the intensity, I would panic internally. I wouldn't show that to the outside world because that's not what men do, and that's not what I learned to do. Because after a period of time, after hiding for so long, after being in so much fear internally and externally, I had enough. And I began to then project courage externally, but that fear, I hadn't dealt with that internally. And so I was suffering with that, and I wanted to eradicate that from my being. And it wasn't until I started playing, maybe that's not the right term, but I started dancing, being with my shadows. And I had the courage to deal with what I was suppressing and oppressing within myself. These darker aspects of myself, the anger, the aggression that I had carried, that was festering within me from a young age, because I made choices. I was paralyzed as a kid. I felt that being in that freeze, and I said I'm never going to be in that freeze again. And so I fought. I went into fight, but that was draining. So how do we overcome or move through fears? We face them, yes. How do we dissolve the ego, the identities that we form that aren't really authentic to who we want to be, the vision that we have for ourselves? It's not matching the version of ourselves that we portray on a day-to-day basis. That was me. That honestly is most of us. We wear these masks to hide ourselves. It's easier for a mask to get hurt than it is for the true, the real self, the authentic version that is us to be hurt. It's easier to pretend to be someone and that someone be rejected or be humiliated than the actual self, the truth of who we want to be and what we want to express. For that to be humiliated, that's painful. And so we don't dissolve the ego through avoidance. We dissolve the ego that we have formed, that we have developed and cultivated, the protector aspect or aspects of self. We dissolve that part of ourselves when it no longer serves us by facing the wholeness of who we are, the fullness of who we are. That means being in the muck, in the shadows, in the stuff that's ugly, in the stuff that doesn't feel good, in the stuff that society says is shit, is not acceptable. I'll tell you a story. It's less than 2 years ago. I went on a deeper journey of psychosomatic and sexual somatic healing, and I felt that it was a 4 to 6 month journey with these two beautiful human beings, a couple in San Diego in the US. And I felt that this was one of the final pieces of the puzzle that was me. Not so much at a micro level, it was a combination of micro and macro. Like, it was a big piece that I hadn't tapped into. Some old stuff that I hadn't released somatically, viscerally. And I'd done a lot of work previous to this. And I continue to do work. I laugh at myself sometimes when I think, oh, but I've done all this work. And I think to myself, but have I? Yes, and there's more. As long as we're breathing and we're here and we're present, there's more, quote unquote, work to do, more to unpack, more to discover. And it can be a profound journey, but I'm digressing. Let me go back. So I went into this knowing, feeling, thinking, projecting, this is going to be tough. There's going to be aspects of this that are going to bring stuff out of me. And I didn't know what that was. There was a great deal of uncertainty. Now at that time, I had just moved to the US very recently. I was in a new flourishing relationship. I didn't feel anything was quote unquote wrong in my life. I felt really connected and open in my life. I felt life was blooming for me. And as I delved deeper into this work, I started to come into contact with aspects of myself that I never have before. Raw, primal, demonic aspects, shadow aspects of self. Now, I'd gone to the depths of shadow previously over the years many times, even as recently as 4 or 5 years ago, and then 6, 7 years ago, 2 massive times that I went very deep for a lengthened period of time. This didn't compare. I couldn't sleep. I'd be waking up in the middle of the night. I didn't know who I was. I was literally shedding identities. I was shedding who I thought I was and who I thought I needed to be in the world, even at a deeper level than I had before. I was having cold sweats. I was distant from those that I loved. I was behaving erratically. I was losing my mind, literally. And I felt, it was a very familiar feeling for me, that I'm losing my mind again. I made a commitment about 4 years ago. The first commitment was about 6, 7 years ago, that I will delve deep into transformation and understand, know, and feel myself at such a level that I'll either get through this and I will be vastly more empowered than I ever have been. I'll commit suicide or I'll end up in a mental asylum. That was the level of commitment that I made to shifting the pain that I was in and the behaviors that I was enacting in the world. And so this feeling wasn't unfamiliar, but the depth was very strange, because those previous times I'd been in great despair. I'd felt suicidal. I'd felt that my life was not connected, but this time I felt everything was growing and flourishing in my life. So how would I feel this way? How would I be waking up in the middle of the night and looking in the mirror and seeing a different face? I'm getting goosebumps now just thinking about it. I'd see another face I'd see, like, I'd be in the mirror, and I haven't shared this publicly before. I'd be looking in the mirror and I'd be saying to the mirror, it's time for you to get out. It's time for you to fucking leave. It's time for whatever's in me to leave. And it felt very real, and my face would change, and I was dealing with some stuff, to say the least. And I was doing all the things, I was using all my tools, but nothing was shifting. It didn't feel that way. And that's what I'm here to really, really express to you and share with you today, is that it may not feel that way. It may not feel that you're making progress, that you're growing as you're dealing with your shadows, but we have to learn to sit in it. And the paradox is, the longer we sit in that pain, in those aspects of self that we've repressed, the quicker we get out of it. And when we look back, we see this almost separation, but also this, oh, that was part of me, this acceptance, this surrender. I'll come to acceptance and surrender in a moment, but it's not resignation. It's not giving up. Because I would have that internal battle with myself. I'm giving up, and I have it now. Like when I set myself a task, whether it's training or whether it's work related or service related or whatever it may be, a to-do list. If I don't complete it, I'm hard on myself. I have to move through it. I have to push through it. I have to do it. Sometimes we need space and a gap and reprieve in order to go further. And the only way we know when to be that, or when to enact that, or to play that out, is by delving into the wholeness of who we are. And that surrender piece is everything. So I remember I told you a moment ago that multiple times in my life I've had to choose progression, death, or the loss of my mental and emotional faculties. And the moment that I could accept any one of those outcomes as real and true, and be okay with that, because the journey was more important, the unraveling, the old way just couldn't stay anymore. I was tired of it. And every time I looked in the mirror and I said, this is it. These are the choices. There's no going backwards. We're going forwards, and these are the outcomes. It's one of these. The moment I breathe and surrender to that, and the moment you breathe and surrender to that and accept that as, yeah, it's okay to feel all of me. Because in feeling all of you, in being with all of you, in understanding, connecting to all of you, you release the ego of its duty to protect, and it learns to protect you in a new way that is more aligned with the vision of yourself. So the version matches the vision. And your coping strategies or protective strategies become healthier and more aligned. And that's what I found for me. And being in the fear taught me more about me than almost anything else. I didn't distract, I didn't distance myself, I didn't numb myself with drugs or alcohol or excessive exercise like I've done in the past, or sex, pornography, masturbation, whatever it may be. Short-term gratification. I chose to sit in it. And I know that journey is not for everyone, but to some extent it needs to be, because if we keep denying parts of ourselves, even the parts that are really uncomfortable, we end up denying all of ourselves. We feel fractured and broken. I felt fractured and broken so long in my life, for so often. And the ego, my ego, would say, let's blame someone else for that, because it's easier to blame someone else than look at self, than take the responsibility and the ownership. I remember once I was in the ocean. 2 occasions. I just finished a very deep session with one of my healers. She was a spiritual healer and psychologist. I'd gone to the beach and I was just sitting there. I was sitting in the ocean and I was very distressed, very intense in where I was in my life. Feeling suicidal, feeling worthless, unraveling every aspect of myself. And I was in the water, and it wasn't a warm day, it was quite a cold day. There were a few people around. And on this occasion, another moment of surrender, I looked to the heavens, to to the all-encompassing Father. I looked out to the vastness of the ocean, the all-nurturing Mother. And I said, if I'm on the right track, if I'm meant to be here, give me a sign. And I sat with that for a moment with my eyes closed. And I said, I'm not surrendering enough. I'm not trusting enough. What does a sign mean? I need to be fucking accurate. I need to really trust in what's happening here. And trust this so-called surrender that I'm making. So I took a deep breath and I said, if I'm on the right path, if I'm meant to live, if I'm meant to be here, then show me dolphins right now. I opened my eyes and I saw 3 dolphins, about 40 to 50, 60 feet away from me, just up. 2 adults and a little baby. And boy, did tears roll down my face. And that was an interesting turning point for me. But it happened because I chose to surrender and I chose to be with it all. From that moment, I created a deeper tolerance and resilience to pain and fear. And when it came, I welcomed it as part of me, without shame and judgment. I began to open up more. I began to vocalize more, not only in expressive words, but also expressive feeling. I began to sit with myself at a deeper level. And so we dissolve the ego by being in it, by naming, not shaming, but naming those parts of ourselves that are no longer serving us. We move through fear by being in it, by owning it. And by knowing that it's okay. Surround yourself with people that see you and care for you and see yourself, and be safe in your environment, and ultimately it comes down to you. Those times, those sleepless nights where I'd roam around the house, looking outside, looking in the mirror, looking in my reflection in the window and seeing this version of self that I've never seen before, I had to sit with that. I didn't need to understand it initially, I just had to be with it. We live in a realm of polarity, almost duality. Not almost, but duality. There are different aspects to ourselves, forces of ourselves, aspects of ourselves that we're not comfortable with. But the more we avoid those parts, the less we get what we really desire in life. And the less we tap into our collective and individual potential. So I'm here to share with you that you're more than capable of moving through hardship, difficulty, challenge, pain, and fear. And embracing that means you embrace all of you, means you give more of you, means you become safer, means you attract more whole, harmonious relationships. Power and blessings to you. Share this video if it's resonated. Perhaps someone really needs to hear this. And if that's you, and blessings on your journey, I'm glad to be of service.